Hi, it's Sayje.
And I'm DeShawn, and welcome to another episode of
Unbinding the Binary. A visual podcast where we get transparent about life, art, love, gender, and so much more.
So much more, y'all. And today, we have the honor of having Dr. Elijah Nicholas with us.
Yes, we do.
Please tell us all about Dr. Elijah.
All but a year ago, I met Dr. Elijah virtually on Zoom for a LGBTQIA inclusivity in the workplace workshop. And I'm so honored to have him today here in the Oracle Shop with us to discuss religion and the trauma that it has had on our community.
Yeah, and definitely want to just extend this to everyone, that this is a trigger warning for anyone. We do talk about a few very deep topics in relation to sexual trauma, religious trauma, and that journey. So just a trigger warning for you to be safe and be mindful as you watch. And if you feel like you need to take a pause or not watch, that's okay too.
So
this is part one of a two-part. So without further ado,
let's get into it.
Yeah. The Oracle Shop is a metaphysical boutique located in the heart of Bushwick, Brooklyn. This shop features beautiful and energizing products for the home, body, and soul, including crystals and minerals, as well as ceremonial and spiritual cleansing supplies, jewelry, oracle cards, tarot cards, books, candles, and more. Come visit us at the Oracle Shop, located at 164 Wilson, Brooklyn, New York, 11237.
We are now back with the one and only Dr. Elijah. Dr. Elijah, thank you so much for being here today in the Oracle Shop to film with us. It's truly an honor to have you here. We met all about a year ago in the digital space on Zoom for a LGBTQ inclusivity in the workplace workshop. So you've been doing this work for a long time, right?
Long time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Could you tell the people a little bit about your journey through light coaching and being an 11-time published author? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so thank you both for having me.
Yeah,
it's so amazing to be here. I'm glad to be in this 44-degree weather today.
Good on New York.
Good on New York.
Yes,
She never
yes.
disappoints.
But if you would have told me I would be in New York a year ago when we met, I would have said, okay, maybe, But we met when I was serving. We were both serving, and that's a part of what I do. My whole mission in life is service. I love people, and I love light, right? I love light. And so anytime I can be of service in a space where it brings light, where it illuminates light, that's what I do. And so you're right, I write. I'm an author. I've written children's books. I've written motivational books, manifestation books. I think the best part of my journey has been when I found myself, my creative juices really started flowing. I was always a very type A person, like very regimented, I had to be number one. And when I tapped into the creative side of my brain, things started happening and flowing that I didn't even know existed.
Wow.
Yeah, so, born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Right.
I grew up in the cold, so this is
Pretty familiar.
It's like home.
Yeah, it's
Very
like home
familiar.
all over again.
Absolutely. I grew up in a pretty religious family. My family is Southern Baptist, AME, and my mother and I are best friends, and so we went through some ebbs and flows with my gender and sexual identity. So I served in the military, joined the military when I was 17 years old, and my mom had to sign the papers.
Fresh out of high school.
I was
right?
still in high school when I joined.
Oh, wow.
I was 17. Yeah, I was still in high school. My mom had to sign the papers to give me permission to go. Yeah. And so when I went in the military, I was 17 years old. I left just shy of my 18th birthday. And I'll never forget when I was at the MEP station, the entry station, I had to sign this paper. You sign a whole lot of stuff when you go in the military. And the one thing I remember signing is the contract. It's the final contract before, you go in the military. Yeah. And the first question, or what I remember to be the first question, it might have been the last question, was, are you a homosexual? It was literally on the questionnaire. And in that moment, I was like...
Blatant just like that.
Are you a homosexual?
Wow.
Yes or no? And
I'm thinking about it. No, I choose not to answer. You had to answer.
No. Very binary, right?
Wow.
Yes.
Very binary.
Very
right?
binary.
No in between.
No in between. And so, so I lied, right? I lied. And in that moment, that was a pivotal moment for me, because I was like, do I lie and, miss out on this opportunity of serving my country and traveling the world? Or do I tell the truth? And who knows what happens then, right? So I lied. And my time in service was really a lifetime of lies. I spent 24 years, 10 months, and 8 days in the military before I retired.
Wow.
And I served as a closet lesbian all of that time. And just before I retired was when the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy came out. It was debanded or debunked, whatever the appropriate terminology is. And so, that's really when my route to really being my most authentic self began, when I retired.
Wow.
Yeah.
Preacher's getting started, and I got like 1,000 questions. Okay, so before we keep going, I do want to make sure we ask, what are your pronouns? Definitely want to make sure that we respect that.
Thank you so much. So my pronouns are he, him, and his. Thank you for asking.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Just want to make sure we
want to get that out the way.
Okay.
Yes.
Very, very, very important.
Okay.
Okay. So now the question.
Okay.
I think it's really interesting that it's listening to you talk about yourself and also your dedication to service, and how you understood, even at in all the things you were going through, you understood this deep need to always be in service, so much so that you were willing to go serve for the country and was totally okay with that. How did you even understand that about yourself at that age? That's such a really deep, you know what I mean? To know I'm a person of service and that is the purpose of my life and that's how I'm going to live it. How did you get there?
Well, that's a great question. I didn't know it then, right? I didn't realize that I was a servant. I didn't even know what a servant leader was. I just knew, real talk, I wanted to travel the world. Right? I knew I wanted to travel the world, and I knew I wanted to serve my country. I had some friends who were in the military at the time, and I saw something about the honor of the uniform and the service of it. But I can always remember from a little girl, I was always a giver. I always gave from my heart. I always wanted to make sure everybody was included. I always wanted to make sure everybody had a seat at the table. My mom will tell you I had all kinds of pets when I was growing up. I had a couple of rabbits, some birds, some mice,
Wow.
Cats, dogs, literally. I had everything, but I was this kid where I just wanted to love on everybody and everything. And now looking back, that's who I was. But then, and I think that's interesting about how things shift as we grow, right? We come out of the womb as servants, right? We come out of the womb as light and as love. And then as the world begins to condition us and shape our minds, then it starts to, oh, I don't know if I'm worthy to do this. Oh, I don't know. So yeah, honestly, thanks for saying that, because I never thought about it from that perspective.
Yeah, and honestly, depending on your gender assignment at birth and how people treat you, that also shifts things too, because there's the other side that's like, oh, you were born this, so you must lead and be da 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 da.
Yes.
That's a whole other,
Yes.
The world can be a heavy place. My dad always says, a child is born with a heart of gold, but it's the weight of the world that may turn that heart cold, right? So it's the work that we have to then do as adults to lift that weight, to become weightless,
That's good.
To become weightless, and you, Dr. Elijah, definitely carry that and that vibration, that weightless vibration.
Thank you. It's been a lot of intentional work, I had to unlearn all of those weights. I had to unlearn and take all those weights out, 1 pound at a time. And it's been a lot of intentional work, on this journey to authenticity.
I bet. Yeah. Especially coming from a religious background.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Religious background. We went to religious private schools. And so, there were certain things that were ingrained. And you literally have to unlearn those things. Yes.
Like we were talking about the other day, it's programming, right? Programming.
Yes.
And it becomes hard to switch on and off from that programming, because it then becomes faith, right? This is what I believe.
Yes.
This is what wakes me up in the morning.
Yes.
So how does one, go through the process of unlearning, or to have the courage to unlearn?
Yeah.
Because that's the first step.
I
Is having that courage.
Yeah, and it takes a lot. That's a big step.
Yeah.
And a journey that I'm still on, to be quite honest.
Me too.
Because
me too.
Every day it takes courage to, for us to go out in the world, and all it takes is one trigger, and then it's like, oh wait, we start retreating, right? So it's daily courage, it's daily courage.
Yes, indeed. With the relationship with your mom, how is that now?
My mom is my best friend.
Yeah.
Like anybody, you probably see my posts about my mom sometimes. Like anybody that follows me on social media, no, I don't play about my mama.
Okay, you heard it here. Dr.
I don't
does not play about his mama.
I have ended relationships about my mama. Like seriously.
Yeah.
When I meet people, I'm single right now, so any single people watching, that is a precursor to Dr. Elijah. I don't play about my mom.
Okay, so they gotta know that.
They gotta know that
before they even sit at the table.
Yeah, because if that's an issue. we keep going. I took a little turn there. I don't play about my mom, but so my mom and I, we're best friends. Really, I talk to my mom every day. I did not talk to her today because let me tell you why. Because I don't like to lie to my mother. Okay. And if I would have told her I was coming to New York today, she would have said, "What are you going to New York for? Do you know the numbers in New York? Do you know?" So I have learned.
Okay.
I've learned.
Don't ask, don't tell. Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, and in a way, it's really, I look at it as protecting her right now because I don't want her worried when I'm out, because I travel so much now. And usually, so when I get home tomorrow, I'll call her, or I'll call her from the airport, and she'll say, "Well, you didn't call me yesterday. Where you been? Did you go somewhere?" So that's how, to answer your question, that's how close we are.
That's amazing.
We talk every day.
That's amazing.
I was 14 years old when we sat at the table and she asked me if I was gay. And it was, matter of fact, it was a wooden table like this, except it was round, and there were 4 chairs around the table. And I came in, I don't know, from basketball or something. And it was a Bible, a black leather case Bible on the table. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be good.
You better tell the truth. See, this was the prerequisite to the question in the military.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she asked me that question: do you like girls? And I was like, I'm telling you, like, all of this went through my mind at the same time. I was like, I love my mom. Like, I can't tell a lie, but I do like girls. I can't. What does that mean? And I was like, yeah, I do. And, you know, the weight that was lifted from telling the truth was amazing. However, the weight that came with telling the truth was heavy. And so my mom, being the person that she was at the time, who was educated, brought up in the Southern Baptist tradition, she spoke to me in the vibration that she was in, right? And she essentially told me that I was going to hell. I was never going to see her and my brother again. I mean, the Old Testament things that we've all been conditioned to. And I literally left that table like, well, I might as well kill myself. Like, that's how I felt. Because I was like, I'm never going to see my mother and my brother again. I'm like, damn to hell. Like, what is the point in living? What is the point in living? And so many of our babies have that thought now. But, and fast forward, thank God for evolution and the journey. Now, my mother is my biggest advocate.
Wow.
She's my biggest advocate.
Wow.
And I always say that I believe she and I agreed to this journey before we came here.
Absolutely.
So we had to have that time at the table so that we could be at the space that we're in now. It was a part of the journey. So yeah, man, I don't play about my mom. Yeah, no, I don't play about I'm serious about mom.
Yeah. You said something that's really key about the vibration that your mom was in at the time.
Sure.
And I definitely can relate to that personally. Because, you know, with my own family, we're in like a interesting place in our journey as a family. And I'm starting to understand what's helping me be able to heal my own issues is understanding that they were responding, as you say, in the vibration that they were in at the time with the knowledge that they had at the time. And my parents were young, and we'll get into all that a little bit later, but that is something that I think is important to recognize, especially for a lot of LGBT people, is that we all have this, like, not all, but some people really, come from a lot of pain with their families, a lot of trauma, and, without excusing abuse, because that's a different thing, but it is good sometimes to sit back and just understand that, like, these people are responding with what they have, what they know, where they're coming from, and that their intentions are not necessarily bad, they just don't know better. You know what I mean? And like learning how to juggle that space, because you have to be very forgiving. You know what I mean? And also in a way still have an open space to allow them back in even after they hurt you, because you have to forgive, and that's a whole journey within itself. How a question that's coming to me now as I'm talking is, how are you, I don't know what that journey was like for you and your mom, but if you ever got to that place, what was it like for you to kind of like heal through that and just be accepting?
It was multiple stops along the way, right? And if I could pause and share a story that may require a bit of a trigger warning, based on something that you just said about abuse, if I may share my history. So, and this is relevant to my journey, because I was molested as a child from the age of 4 to about 9 or 10. Right, and that piece I bring up specifically is because the way I was able to heal from that trauma is I had to understand where my stepfather was in his journey at that time, right? And that was such a huge part of my healing, right? And so I bring that up because that healing allowed me to forgive my mother for subconsciously thinking she wasn't there for me. As a child, we think, well, the people who are supposed to protect us, they didn't protect us, right? But now I know my mother protected me in the best way that she could. And I know that part of her protecting me, like many people may not agree with this, was getting married, having a stable environment for us. That was part of her protecting her children. And so once I was able to forgive my stepfather, have a face-to-face straight up conversation, then I could begin to peel back other things. And then I could begin to really see my mom in a different light, see him in a different light, and see the people in my intimate circle, and see myself in a different light. And so along that path, like my mother, like she did not want me. She, like when I told her after. See, I'm still like some stuff I tell after. That was something that I told after, that I was going to meet with my stepfather and have that conversation. And I did it again, protecting her, right? And when I told her, she said, no, you didn't do that. But think about where our parents were. So my mom is 74. So, you know, this healing took place almost 12, 15 years ago. And you think about where they were and the secrets that took place in families, right? Some things, even if it's sitting right here in this cup, you do not acknowledge it. You just don't. So that was a part of my mom and my journey. And I had to say, no, Mom, like this has to happen. Now I can look back and say it had to happen, because that's a part of breaking the generational, what many people call curses, but really we call it a spirit of truth, generational choices. I had a choice to make in that moment. Do we shift this perspective here, or do we leave it and brush it under the table? And I chose to have that conversation with my mother, and I pray now that won't happen anymore in our family.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Because you uncovered it.
Yeah. Uncovered it, forgave it, moved in love, and now let's keep going.
Your capacity is phenomenal. Your capacity is phenomenal, because a lot of people don't have that, and they don't have the opportunity to even sit down with the person that may have abused them. I commend you on your capacity, big time.
Thank you.
Big time. It takes a lot. It takes a lot.
Thank you.
I can definitely relate. Just to share, you know, the same was for me, but it was my cousin, rest in peace. But he was a child. I was 3, he was 9, I think. And yeah, he was 9 because he passed away when he was 11 and I was 5. And it went on for that time in our family. And you know, it took some time to kind of understand a lot of things, because as you know, families and that stuff gets swept under the rug, or like, you know, and I was born, my mom was a teenager when she had me, so I was kind of like this in between, like first grandchild, you know what I mean? So nobody knew what to do with me, and I'm running around just, you know, creative and flamboyant as possible. So I'm sure they were just like, yeah, whatever. And so, you know, but not even understanding the help that I needed, you know, as a child to deal with my own sexual trauma, and then that, not dealing with that then, how that manifested in my life, you know, and it took me until I was an adult to like heal a lot of those spaces and like, you know, sit down. And that was one of the, you know, things. And I wish I could, you know, because I held on to that for a while with him, and I got to that place where I was like, oh, he was a baby too. Like there was something, you know what I'm saying? Like there was things going on with him that nobody was talking about. And we do have to work very hard at breaking those generational curses. And when you get that moment where you're like, I have to fix this, that responsibility becomes like so heavy sometimes. Yes. You know what I mean? Because you know, like, why I gotta be the one to deal with this?
I gotta do all this work.
Yeah, you know, like I do all this work. Yeah. And you know, it takes a lot. And your approach to this was just is really inspiring, to just how you just commanded that. And I thank you for sharing, and your capacity is incredible. It's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. It was a lot of healing work.
Yeah.
You know, I do not want to discount that. A lot of therapy, a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, a lot of quiet time, a lot of screaming, a lot of crying, a lot of I'm not doing that. Right? Yeah. 10 years. Yeah. It took me 10 years. I read a scripture I believe it's in the book of Mark, about forgiveness. 10 years I read that scripture every day. because I wanted to forgive my stepfather. And it took me 10 years.
Wow.
Like, so I don't want people to miss that.
Right, right.
The work that it takes. And literally, I was at home in Wisconsin. I was laying down. I'll never forget, my bed was it still is sometimes, in my mom's basement. And I was laying, I opened my eyes. I felt so light. I said, today is the day. Today is the day. I was like, today is the day. Like, and it just, honestly, my life has not been the same. And now that I think about it, it took me 10 years. I was like, God, like, I don't want to carry this no more. I cannot carry this pain. Like, I got stuff to do. And I will never forget, I opened my eyes and I said, today is the day. And it just, my life has been like, the pad, talk about free, like that thing was holding me back for 30-something years, man. It was holding me back. And when I let that thing go, like, then stuff just started.
All the doors started.
Yes. Start shit.
Wow.
Yeah. It's, I'm telling you, and what I understand is not everybody can do that. I understand that.
A lot of people don't even know how.
Yeah, they don't know how.
Absolutely.
You know, like the pain is so great that they don't even know how to like take that first step, or even to know that that's possible, because we're not really taught that either. We're,
Absolutely.
You know, we're not taught how to forgive in that way, or even to understand. We're not taught to understand. You know what I mean? We're taught to like, nah, and then we have to like look sometimes, you know, and unfortunately that sometimes that responsibility does fall on the victim.
Yes.
A lot of times, you know what I mean? But I think that people are starting to learn a lot of that now, because these conversations are happening a little bit more often than they used to.
Breaking generational curses, dealing with your trauma, and getting in touch with yourself. That is definitely very on brand with the times, right? Because how are we going to move forward into this future where we can really unite and flourish without whisking away all of that no longer serves us, you know?
No longer serves us.
You said something earlier, Dr. Elijah, about healing work, you know, and we just talked about a little bit about your experience with the military.
Yes.
So where in the journey exactly did you become a pastor?
Yes. So I answered the call, if you will. that's what it is in a traditional church.
Right.
Like, God knocks on the door at 2:00 in the morning and says, "Hey," at the time my name was Tasha. Tasha, you about to be a pastor. And I was like, here we go, I'm dreaming. Let me go back to sleep, right? So that was about 2011, 2012.
Okay.
Is when my ministry path started. I started out serving security for the bishop first, because I was, I was still in the military. I was coming out of the military. So it was kind of like the natural thing for me to fall into. And it was in a space where it was my first inclusive space. Inclusive meaning it was the first place where I could go and be gay and worship God. And I was like, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Like, I found my freedom in this space, literally. And so I think it was building on to the service aspect, right? And so someone literally, I was walking down the fellowship hall and someone tapped me and said, "Hey, you need to be in this meeting," literally. And I was like, okay. And I go in the meeting, it's a meeting for all the security ministers. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I could do this. And so I started doing it, and then, being an egotistical person that I was, had a huge ego. I still try to contain it. But I wanted to be number one in everything. Like, if I'm gonna be this, I gotta be the number one this, right? And so I started my path to ministry as a minister, and then I got ordained, and actually matriculated very fast through ministry. At the time, in 2012, I met my former wife. 2014, we started a ministry together, and it was an online ministry, like all the churches are now, online, virtual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like one of the first online ministries.
Wow.
Really?
2000. Yeah, it was called Kingdom International Ministries Virtual Church.
Interesting.
Yes, and we started with 4 people around the table like this, and grew. We had so many followers, like on Facebook. It was such a hunger for this space at the time, and it grew very fast. And as fast as it grew, my mind and conscience started expanding as well. Mm-hmm. And so in 2017, I was being ordained, or what is it called, affirmed to be an apostle.
Oh wow!
And in the moment where the apostle prayed, like on my head, the Lord said, I could hear it, like as soon as, like I heard it that night when he said, "You about to be a minister." The guy said, "It is finished," and I was like, exactly. Yeah, that's what I did. I was like, nah, ain't nobody else heard this but me.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, what's finished? Like, we just getting started here.
Yeah.
Mind you, I still had a really big ego. So for me, I was like, I was the pastor, and I was the apostle, the bishop, like, yeah. You know, I mean, real talk. Like, most people won't say that, but I had a big bleep ego. Like, right? So in
big
that
energy.
moment, big. Oh my God. Like, you couldn't tell me nothing. Like, and in that moment, I was like, what is finished? Because we had ministries in Africa, we had ministries up here in Connecticut, all over the United States. Like, it wasn't a small thing.
And this is from the virtual church.
From the virtual church, we went from virtual to covering physical churches. And oh, by the way,
also all inclusive.
All inclusive, and but these were also, we had traditional churches that knew that my wife and I were out, open lesbians, but I believe they saw the God in us, right? They saw spirit in us, and they were like, okay, we coming along.
Yeah.
So we grew very fast, and within that, it is finished moment, from there to the time 6 months later, the ministry was closed, I was transitioning, and me and my former wife were separated. 6 months.
Okay.
It is finished.
So
It's finished.
On that note,
It is finished.
we're gonna take a quick break.
We're gonna take a break.
So we can get back and
Yes.
learn a whole lot more about Dr. Elijah because yeah. So we'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Rob, and welcome to Bingers.
Bingers is retail's newest bargain experience. View the catalog online at www.bingers.fun. Bingers opens every Friday with entirely new merchandise from the week before. Any items unsold on Friday for $10.99 are reduced to $8.49 on Saturday, all the way until all the items are only $2.99 on Tuesday. After Tuesday, we close, clean up, and start all again the following Friday. Bingers Bargain Bins is located at 1949 42nd Street, Astoria, New York, 11105. Bingers.
And we are back with Dr. Elijah. And we left off at a really good part, so we're about to just jump right back in.
Part.
Okay. So, it is finished.
It is finished.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, what do you want to? What do you want?
Well, I guess because this story is so captivating to hear how this all like happened, and then all of a sudden it was like it's done, and then 6 months later, like the relationship ended, the transition started, and like here you are now.
Yeah.
So before we even get into that part, I actually do want to ask you, when you got the call, if you will, which I'm very, very familiar with that terminology. We're gonna get into all that in a minute. Understanding your position, like understanding like I'm a lesbian at the time, and like how you felt. How? Because I guess I'm just curious as to how you were able to accept all of this and still like have the courage to be in church and be around everyone and be so like affirmed and like, yes, I'm a lesbian and this is my wife, and yes, God, we are here for you. Because how?
Because for most people, as you described earlier, with coming out to your mom and answering her question with the Bible on the table, and this imagery of fire and brimstone, I'm going to hell. So how did you, in between that time, overcome that to accept the call? Like, I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm. Well, a big part of that was the space I was in at the time, right? So I had moved to Atlanta, and I found this, or happened upon this inclusive church. And I love the inclusive spaces because if nothing else, they provide a space. Some would argue whether it's always a safe space, but it's a space nonetheless for us to explore our spirituality, our faith, our religion. And so that's the space that I was in. And the leader that I had at the time, he was all about vision and freedom and truth, and so I was like yeah. And so to get that call at the time, like, it was like kind of like the next natural thing. As when I look back on it, now had I got that call and been in a more traditional space, I don't know about that, right?
Okay.
Because I grew up in the church and I always wore suits and ties. As a lesbian, I was like, I wore suits and ties. Now it makes sense, right? But when I was in a traditional church, the mothers of the church would be looking at me like, what you doing in here with that suit on, girl?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
And that tie, right? And I would get in trouble for chewing gum. I mean, like the smallest thing. And then so I started feeling like I was a target, like in the traditional spaces, right? And I got to the point where I was just like so uncomfortable. Like going back home to church, or going to traditional spaces, and I didn't have the freedom that I have now, right? So it was a large part. No, it was not even a large part. It was because of the inclusive space that I was in, and so I think that if nothing else, the inclusive and affirming spaces provide a space for us to find our freedom, period. Like, period, dot. And what we do with that freedom, where we go from there, because once we learn that we're free, then it's up to us to decide whether we want to stay. Because when we become free, then we realize, well, this environment might not be the best space for me. I'm free now. I can make different decisions. I make different choices. And that's the path, right? That's what started happening. I started seeing my worth and understanding. Everybody is called, not just one person or one special person. I wasn't special. I happened to answer the call. Everybody has a call in their life, right?
And
Everybody.
sometimes, a lot of times, more than one.
Yeah,
absolutely,
right? More than one.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can relate to you as far as the inclusive spaces, because one of the most recent spiritual or religious communities that I was a part of was here in Unity in New York. I don't know if you're familiar with.
Yeah.
So a speech therapist friend of mine who formerly worked in the school that I work in now had invited me to sing in their choir.
Wow.
Because her and I had did some caroling for the parents and the children for a Christmas show one time, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, you have such an awesome voice, and we need more, like lower voices in the choir." And I was like, "Oh, what church do you go to?" And in my head, I'm like, "Nah, Sayje, you went all these years avoiding somebody's Christian church, and you about to go sing for the Lord now." About to do that now, and this is before my transition. So I was like, now, well, what kind of church? So she was like, no, you'll love it. She was like, the choir director is openly gay, and he happens to be pastor or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. And I got there, and they were the sweetest aunties
open
and uncles, and just open arms and open voices and open channels for the light, and the perfect segue to help me into, the woman that I am, that I've become now. So those inclusive spaces can, I agree, allow you a certain amount of freedom and room for spiritual growth, as well. And it just so happened that they had a large community of queer people and people who sang on Broadway and did all these things, in entertainment, and then they gathered to sing on stage every Sunday in symphony space. So the church itself didn't even really feel like a church because it was in a theater. It felt like a Broadway show every single time.
Wow.
So I was just like, I'm all in this. And then even the service, we meditated. Wow. We meditated. And that was something that I was heard or thought of as in Christian churches. It was like a no-no.
Yeah.
Like, that's the devil. We're not tapping into no.
Yeah.
Like, we're not doing that. So I was so blown away, right? Because I already had this preconceived notion of I'm gonna go in here and it's gonna be a whole bunch of this and that, and it actually wasn't. Yeah, it actually wasn't. And I was thoroughly surprised.
It's interesting because as you are talking about these inclusive spaces, and I'm my memory is jogging, and I've definitely been introduced to more queer churches, but the fear in me being in those spaces was so strong that it was like I cannot go back. I remember when I was 18, I had just left home in Chicago, living my best little I'm free gay life, and still trying to search for, I guess, I can sometimes be a person of patterns, especially my upbringing and how intense it was with church. So trying to find that space again, and I remember finding out about this is the first gay church I had ever heard of, and I'm like, what? And my friend at the time, he was all for it, it's gay, and I was like, I'm not going to that. Are you kidding me? That is not no. But I ended up going, and I remember I was the whole time I was there, it was I just felt so I was doing something wrong. It was the fear, and everybody, full worship, the whole night, all the stuff that I grew up with, but I could not handle that space because I'm this is so, oh my God is going to get I'm gonna get hit by a car, my life is gonna be over. I was when I say the trauma, and we'll get there, but it was deep. And even moving forward, I had been introduced to certain little pockets like that, and I could never allow myself to be comfortable in those spaces. And the person I am now, I wish I would have, because it probably would have helped me quite a bit, and I would have avoided a lot of anguish in those spaces. And the last one I went to, it was actually in Atlanta. It was a church in Atlanta, and my friend was, again, it's this gay church, and the pastor's in, this is the first gentleman, and I'm like, I am not doing that,
Period.
Yeah, but I did go.
I don't think you understand. I'm really not.
But I did go, and I just wasn't comfortable, and I do remember this one time. My mom and we went to the movies. We went to see For Color Girls, actually, in Atlanta. And this is one of the few moments my mom and I have spent together, just the two of us. We don't have many, but that was one of them. And I remember we were sitting there in the theater, and that pastor came in, and the first gentleman was sitting there. So I'm sitting there oh my God. And and so I tapped my mom, and I was like, this they actually have church, and they're pastors, and they're gay. And my mother looked at me and my mom does this thing when she's uncomfortable. She just takes a deep breath, and she just kind of sinks in, and I already know she's in her head what? So she looked at me, and she just went. She sat back, did one of these, and I'm like, see, this one I cannot be So it's interesting that your experiences in those spaces were just you were yes, bring it on, and I was over in the corner God about to be so mad at me. It's bad enough I'm gay, I can't be in here asking God for forgive. This is not gonna work. And just trying to learn how to get to that space where I'm still navigating that. We'll get to that. But just learning how to fit in with the religion, and it's caused me so much discourse. So I admire your. You were just like, yes, God loves me. Of course He does. And I'm like over here like, no, He doesn't. Not He didn't for me. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, absolutely. I didn't feel that at all. Like I definitely felt like I was, doomed forever. So breaking out of that process is one. So
it is a process.
Yeah.
It is a process.
Yeah.
And mine didn't come overnight.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it definitely took some shedding of trauma and some of those head conversations of, is this really right? Is this am I so it wasn't just like I went and I'm free. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't I'm free, but then at night when I go to sleep, it's like, am I really free? He says I'm free, but it took me knowing that I was free, right? Because somebody can tell you, they can preach to you, they can tell you the word, but they can't live it for you. So until I felt that I was free, and a part of it was that big thing that I had to forgive, when I start saying, oh, there might be something to this Jesus thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, He loves me, and now I done shed another level of forgiveness and might go to therapy. So it was, it was a little bit at a time, right? And there was some painful moments. I mean, but think about it. Like, many of us have been so conditioned and so 10 Commandments, so, Old Testament, New Testament, that those things we gotta unlearn.
The abominations and all that type of talk and this idea that God is of condemnation and judgment and fire and like I said again, brimstone instead of mercy and kindness and love and acceptance and more importantly unconditional and all of that stuff is written in the text, but a lot of communities only pull the extremes and the authoritative God.
They've taught us how they made us believe God is very binary, actually, very like this, this,
and a man.
That is such a good point.
A man as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That part. Yeah.
That's a whole nother we could do a whole series on that.
Okay.
Right?
Seriously.
So then you being a gay man, especially, is like, oh yeah, you are definitely further from that because that's not what God is or was or therefore made you to be.
Right. Right.
So it makes me think back to the questionnaire on your form for the military, because they ask you the basic questions: where you're from, what's your race, and all that, and it makes you wonder what does your sexuality have to do with anything, or your orientation have to do anything about enlisting in the military?
Absolutely nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And that's clear today. 10 years after, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. Openly gay people are serving in the military. Trans people are serving in the military, out loud and proud, and we're still a pretty strong country.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
Yeah, they would have you they would have you to believe otherwise, but no, it's not the case. So when you got to this place of like, it's finished, I'm transitioning, and I'm no longer going to be a pastor, what was happening in that space that created this next wave of decisions?
All hell broke loose. Literally.
Wow.
Literally, complete chaos in my life happened.
Wow.
When I say complete, I'm talking about complete chaos. So my journey was lesbian, non-binary, trans. Right? That was my journey to my authentic self. And I was authentic in each one of those spaces, right? And when I was at the space of my non-binary space, I shared that with a very intimate circle of friends who happened to be a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, who also many of them happened to be a part of the church community. And we were at home, something about the kitchen table, right? We were at home, at our home, my former wife and I. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to share this, with this group of folks. It was the most painful time of my journey. I literally left our kitchen table and went in our living room and cried. Because these people who I thought were my closest friends not only did they not understand, they didn't accept me. They were like, yeah, no, that's not your name. Your name is this. You were born a girl. You're always going to be a girl. Like those kinds of conversations. Wow. It was, when I tell you, it ripped me to pieces. It was horrible. I mean, I can't even say how horrible it was. Yeah. And so that was the beginning of my trans experience, my trans journey, is rejection from the community that I found my freedom in. Like, how about that? The same space that I found my freedom in was the space that now rejected this new level of freedom that I found. And so, of course, everything has meaning, right? So fast forward to the healing space that I'm in now, Spirit and Truth Sanctuary. My pastor gave me a book by Fraley, and it's called the Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I don't know if I'm saying pedagogy right. But he talks in this book about how the oppressed become the oppressor. And how, right? How the oppressed become the oppressor. Yeah. And so in this book, it talks about different communities, how once they, in my words, find their freedom, then they find another subgroup of people to basically enslave. That's my word. Right? And so when we think about our experience, our being the African-American journey to the United States, finding freedom, religion, Christianity, voting. And we think about that journey, right? And then you have this, I'll say this inclusive term, queer people who come together and want to find some freedom. Wait, what? Like, no, we're not doing that. And then, okay, then our queer brothers and sisters and non-binary folks, we find this freedom. And then within this subgroup, we find another group of people who are asexual or pansexual or however we identify, and then we begin to, so it becomes so much of a layered oppression. And the reason that oppression is never reversed, in my opinion, is because we don't take the time to heal, to say what it is, and get past the obvious oppression that's happening. And that to answer your question, what happened for me when the hell broke loose, that's when my ego started shedding. That's when I started realizing that many of the things that I'm doing it for me. Like I'm serving people for me. Like that's an oxymoron, right? I'm serving people because it makes me feel good. No, I should be serving people because it makes them feel good. Because it brings out the light in them, right? So I had to go through those painful moments, those painful points in my journey to get to the space that I'm in now, where I serve people, I serve light, I serve the plant, I serve the earth, I serve everything. I just serve, and I don't need any glory in it. You know, and so when I said my matriculation through ministry, Christian ministry specifically, it was very fast because I feel like God was like, okay, you got a big ego, I need you to go and accomplish these things, and then, okay, now can we get to work? Like that's when I heard, that's when I understood the call. Okay, now Elijah, you had your moments. Can we do this now? Yeah. And that's where I'm at now.
Wow. Yeah. It's interesting because I think a lot of in what you're saying, it's if you know the story of Jesus, which I know you do, I think that is very reminiscent to Jesus's point in existence that a lot of people overlook, is that Jesus came to like dismantle all, like we got here, now let me explain to y'all what this is really about, and take it from here. And that message just got lost in the translation. And it's, you know, in a lot of ways I wonder, like, was Jesus non-binary or something and we just don't talk about it? Because it's very just the similarities of things. And I'm just always like, you hung out with and you were something
and
about
you
this
presented
is feeling,
a little.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
something is feeling a little like
Yeah.
there's a piece of this story that's not being told.
Absolutely.
And you know, we know that there's a huge chunk of Jesus life that's left out, you know. But saying that to say is that your understanding is it's reminiscent. It's the same essence, you know what I mean? That like, okay, I'm getting you through all of this, so now we can get to the real work, because they're not getting the message, you know what I mean? Like the masses are not understanding. That's not what I said. This is not what I meant. This is not what. All right.
Yeah.
Can we start over?
Redo.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, we gotta start over.
We need to redo.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Wow, your story is just really like so powerful. It's so powerful, and your unwavering faith I find to be fascinating, because you know, Christianity and religion will have us to believe that we don't have space to have that kind of faith, or to stand affirm in it, and to even have the audacity to still say God spoke to me and said, and still present is like, child, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Yeah, like to have the audacity, and I'm not that I don't want to say I find it fascinating, but I'm just like, wow, like it fascinating is not the word. I find it affirming.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I find like wow, God still works in the ways that I believe that it works.
Yes.
And I remember getting to a space in my own journey. I was in Atlanta, as a matter of fact. Oh wow! I just had a thought, because so I was in Atlanta. It's right before I moved to New York. And I was sitting in my house. I was isolated for a while, and I remember then when the Unbinary, I guess, clicked, where I was just like, color doesn't have a gender. This doesn't have a gender. Like, none of this stuff makes sense. Like, that's when like that like shift started to happen. And in fact, I recorded it because I was like super into my artistry at the time, and I had said that I was going to create this project called Endogenous, because my stage name was Staj at the time. And I had wrote out like, and the intro of that, I still have it recorded. It says, I am not male nor female. I am space, time, and sound. That was the intro. That was, and it was just spoken like that, and then it was going to go straight into the music. And I had got this understanding of like, this doesn't make sense. And at that time is when I stopped saying that God was he. I was like, that doesn't even make sense. Why would God be like he? Like, that's a complete like disregard for like the feminine. So why would that be? And I remember sitting in the floor in my living room, and I said, I don't know what you want to be called, but is it cool if I just say divine spirit? Because I don't think you're he or him. Like, I was like, it was very, he or she. And it was very clear, but then that fear kicked in, and it was like, oh, you doing too much, this is blasphemous, like, you are like, hell, God, but like, you already like teetering the line, like, and it just drew me back into this space of like fear and trying to find that community. So like no, seriously, like I'm gaining so much of what's the word I'm looking for? Affirmation and just and courage from your story, because I didn't think it was possible, and honestly have just been on this journey and even understanding like God, like I say God because that's what I'm comfortable with, because that's how I was raised, and that feels the most authentic thing to roll off my tongue. So I'll just say that, and I'm like, you must love me. Like, if unconditional love has to be like unconditional, and forgiveness has to be this, and like, are we in this journey to understand what all those things mean? And like, and just like, I you have to accept me, but I believe you do, and I hope you do, and I want to trust that, and I'm gonna no longer allow fear to stop me from trusting that. And that's kind of where I'm at now, where I'm like, I cannot allow fear to make me continuously believe that I'm unloved or unlovable because of who I am, when nothing in this life is making sense to who I am. So I have to, you must love me. This you wouldn't have, you know what I'm saying? It just has to be. Like, I don't understand. You wouldn't have made me this way.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
I just thank you so much. Honestly, like I'm over here like, oh my God. Like,
of course, you're welcome. And I would say that in this moment, I am here because you called me forth. Does that make sense? Like so like I know that you're saying and I appreciate the appreciation, but I want to reciprocate that and let you know that like you had to call me forth to be here in some capacity. Does that make sense?
It makes
both everybody in this
100%
room,
sense.
and whether it was in a thought, a question, a stoplight, something.
it was literally a stoplight.
Wow.
Literally a stoplight. We were in the car. And we had filmed the episode, and religion had came up in the episode. No, seriously.
Let's get into it.
No, seriously. No, this is what happened. We were having a conversation in one of our episodes, and religion came up very briefly, and I touched on it, and in that moment, it hit me like, oh, we're gonna have to have a talk about this. Wow. And it stayed with me. We were in the car, and we were sitting at a stoplight, and I said, Sayje, I want to have a conversation about religion. I want to do a show on religious trauma.
Wow.
And she was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, like, I think I'm ready to talk about this. And we had a whole little moment. And that's when she said.
Yeah, and I literally said, I'm going to ask Dr. Elijah if he would like to be a part of this. Immediately. Immediately. That was my response.
That was it.
I was tired. I was in bed. So I was a little quiet. That was the only thing that I said. I said, I'm going to reach out to him.
In fact, that's when you got off the car. Because I think not too long after that, because we had got to the destination. That's what it was. So we were sitting in the car. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's that's how that happened.
Just like we said
That's
that
so
we knew
good.
this wasn't going to be the last time that we would serve together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here we are.
Yeah.
The synchronicity is very, very, very.
Absolutely. It is. It's amazing. I love it.
So we're gonna take a break there, and we will be back. Actually, this is our end of our first episode. So this is a 2-part episode, as we mentioned earlier. So this is where we will stop for today, and we will be back in 2 weeks to pick up where we left off. But in the meantime, Dr. Elijah, please tell everyone where they can find you online, your books. Tell us all about that. Tell us more.
Yes, so you can find me, Dr. Elijah Nicholas, on all social media platforms. You can find my amazing children's books, Madoodle and Madoodle the New Kid. Madoodle is about a 10-year-old African-American young girl who is navigating the gender transition of her Uncle Pete, who used to be her favorite Auntie Mary. And in Madoodle the New Kid, we introduce an amazing non-binary kid to the classroom. And Madoodle is the love superhero. And so Madoodle on Amazon and Walmart.com. Dr. Elijah Nicholas, all social media platforms.
Awesome. Thank you. And so if you want to find us, we are at www.unbinding. Wow, I always forget that word. I always have a pause.
I do too.
We are at www.unbindingthebinary.com. You can find all of our social media links and our email address. Please email us if you want to be on the show. If you have topics that you want us to talk about, we would love to hear from you.
Or reach out to us on Instagram and send us a DM. We're always active on there. So that's unbinding.the.binary.
Yes. But again, you can just go to our website, unbindingthebinary.com, and all those links will be there. So,
YouTube as well.
Yes. So we will be back, and we will pick up where we left off today for part 2.
First time ever.
Yeah.
Part 2.
So we'll see you next time.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at unbinding.the.binary. Email us at unbinding.the.binary.podcast@gmail.com.